Hi there, I'm Maxine Coleman. I'm the only daughter of 2 world-famous rocket scientists. Since I was little, I was brought along each time they made a television appearance, and my +1 was always my best friend, Gail.
What's your secret to such success? Well, we've both loved science since we were kids and decided to devote our lives to it. And family is our biggest motivation. It's not rocket science.
Whoa, your parents are so cool! On our way home, Dad asked me,
So, what's your dream, sweetie?
While I was scratching my head for an answer, Gail already said, I want to be a talk show host, just like that lady tonight.
That's great. You can definitely do it. Don't worry, Maxine. You'll soon know yours.
However, both Gail and I had problems learning. While Gail struggled to say a proper sentence, reading and writing gave me the hardest time. Naturally, we both hated school. My parents took me to the doctor, and I was diagnosed with dyslexia. He also said I'd have much difficulty in school and wouldn't achieve high academic results. I was quite upset to hear that, but my pop-pop, who was a high school teacher, wasn't pleased with that remark.
Nonsense. Maxine's very bright. Dyslexic or not, she'll succeed with the right method.
Since then, Pop-Pop began helping me and Gail study. Each time we finished a book, he'd give us little rewards. He also introduced us to sports, and even brought us to cool places like museums, galleries, and aquariums. From the moment I stepped foot in the aquarium, I knew this place is right up my alley because dolphins! Look, it's following me! I immediately told my parents the good news that evening. I found my passion. I'll become a marine biologist when I grow up. Years went by, and school wasn't scary to us anymore. Thanks to my pop-pop, I'm now at the top of my class and excel at biology. Dyslexia didn't have much effect on me. Meanwhile, Gail got rid of her stutter and became much more confident. We're like Superman and Batman, always side by side, working towards our own dream.
Professor Coleman, please tell us more about your latest research on marine life.
This is my life's work, which has been under development for the last decade. We both got into an elite high school, which would be a good jumping pad for our future. But unlike in middle school where I could learn at my own pace, I had to bend over backwards to have a good GPA since the curriculum here is so intense. Unfortunately, dyslexia returned due to stress, making things even harder for me. In class, I had to look up the dictionary every 5 minutes, which slowed me down. One time, I stayed in class during recess to correct all the D's and B's that I'd mixed up in my essay. That alone got me called nerd. On the contrary, the pretty, extroverted Gail already became the face of the students' council, and she still tried her best to help me. That's right, this is just a minor setback. But that's not all. Yesterday, my chemistry teacher asked me to read the lab safety rules. Don't taste or sniff. You should be wafting the spell.
What?
I mean, smell. Sorry.
We're in chemistry class, not Potions 101, Professor Snape.
That's how Snape became my nickname, all because of that Robbie guy. Everyone loved his shenanigans, and he got away with everything because he's a rising track star. But really, he's the villain in my story. Lately, Gail and I had less time to chat because she's so busy, hanging out with Robbie. They met when Gail interviewed him for the school paper. Worse still, she often defended him, saying I'd like him once I got to know the guy. Ugh, no thanks. Besides, it seems that Gail's making achievements towards her dream. Meanwhile, I could barely handle studying and getting along with my classmates. Then came a time when every student who wished for a head start into a prestigious university needed to see the college counselor, Mrs. Morales. She said that my grades were pretty good, but I'd also need a good personal statement. It's supposed to capture the essence of who I am and show that I'm ready to commit myself to my future. Simple enough, right? But when it comes to actually writing, why is it so hard? Am I doubting my own plan? Can I really be a marine biologist? At dinner, I tried to bring this up to my parents, but it seemed they're already thinking I'm a marine bio student. Guess there's no turning back now. I called Gail to the aquarium to help me clear my thoughts. She was late, so I went to catch up with my dolphin friends. They actually calmed me down. Suddenly, a screeching voice took me out.
You're dyslexic because you speak dolphins' language? Should we find Dolphinese books for you?
I turned around to see Gail and an entourage of her new friends and that buffoon. They started giggling. No word in the English language could describe how mad and humiliated I was. Did you really need to bring them here just to embarrass me? I walked away, but accidentally headed to a glass tunnel. It felt like I was fully submerged underwater. The horrible memory of the time I fell through ice into the deep, dark, frozen cold water came rushing back. I immediately dashed outside. Max, wait! I turned around to see Gail running after me. "Watch out! A car's coming!" I quickly pushed her away. The car didn't hit her, but she's injured. We brought her to the hospital ASAP. But when she came to, Gail couldn't speak. Her doctor said her vocal cord was temporarily paralyzed due to neck and chest trauma. That meant Gail could no longer present the school sports day. I was overcome with guilt. Gail told me,
"I'll be all right. Sorry about earlier. I thought bringing our classmates would cheer you up."
She even said that I should keep chasing my dream and not let anything hold me back. I was so touched, but somehow, her words made me feel so pressured. I'll even work harder from now on. After that day, Robbie kept following me around trying to apologize. I avoided him like the plague. One day, I even skipped English, and when I got back, my classmates were buzzing about some substitute teacher named Mr. Coleman. They seemed so excited, since he didn't make them do any work and only told them fun anecdotes. Huh? That name rings a bell. And later my suspicion was confirmed when I met with my grandpa's angry and disappointed look after school. I obviously went home to a raging storm, but it didn't matter. I used this chance to spill my guts about how exhausting school was, how annoying it was to be picked on by an absolute moron all the time while my bestie wasn't by my side. Strangely, Grandpa listened attentively, then simply said he'd handle it. A few days later, he revealed that his way of handling it was making me that dimwit's tutor. Worst idea ever! Even though Pop guaranteed that clown would work with me, I still wanted to kiss that jock with an uppercut. I ranted to Gail thinking she'd help me out of this. Unexpectedly, Gail also told me to give him a chance. Then, I might see his good side too? Right at that moment, the idiot appeared with a Nintendo Switch. How immature! That's my cue to leave. After the first lesson, I realized any regular teaching method could never hold this dummy's attention. But I can't just give up. Pop taught me that there's no bad students. Fine, I'll find the right way to make him study. So, I showed him YouTube videos on biology to keep him focused, taught him the periodic table song, and talked about world history in his language. In 1914, after the Austrian Archduke was unalieved, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, and Russia was like, "Say less, we got you, bro." Then Germany wanted to be the main character and waged war when literally nobody asked. So, you're saying World War I started mostly because the German Empire was pressed about being mid? Yes, brother. After some time, Robbie's grades went from D and F to C and B. While I no longer had to cram like before, since preparing lessons for him helped me remember everything naturally. Studying suddenly wasn't so hard anymore. And maybe Gail was right. This guy wasn't that terrible after all. One afternoon, Robbie shared some good news. "Hey, my track meet went so well. Thanks for helping me with my grades, or else I would have been disqualified. Let's celebrate!" "Congrats! Can't celebrate without Gail. I heard she just got back from the hospital. Let's come to her place and get nuts." Moderately, though. Robbie passionately talked about his great achievement, while I told Gail that we're getting along now, but Gail seemed unenthusiastic. Then she coldly asked us to leave. We were both so confused. I asked Gail's mom and found out that most of her injuries had healed, except for her vocal cord. She's undergoing treatment, but her doctor was unsure how long it would take for her to talk again. Poor girl. Suddenly, Gail rushed out to put a piece of paper in my hand, then ran away. On my way home, I read the note. "It's all your fault. If you didn't run, none of this would have happened. I'd rather get hit by a car. It would have only given me a broken arm. It's you who killed my dream." That's Gail's true feelings? Her words cut deep. When Gail returned to class, she didn't talk to anyone, and of course avoided me and Robbie. One time during recess, Mrs. Morales came to me and complimented my personal statement. She even said that if I kept up my GPA, I should have it all in my bag. That means my essay didn't seem as pretentious as I thought, right? Robbie was so happy for me, but I saw Gail's glare out of the corner of my eye and immediately signaled for Robbie to keep it down. At lunchtime, he asked if I was upset because of Gail. "Not really. She'll perk up when she gets better." "So, why the long face? Did Mrs. Morales say you have a bright future ahead of you?" "I'm not sure anymore. I made myself out to look like someone fully committed to marine biology in my essay, but deep down, it felt like I was lying. I can't even get close to water after falling through the ice that one time. I suddenly felt my throat closing and my eyes watering. I instinctively stood up and left without saying another word. I wanted to talk to my mother about this as soon as I got home, but I arrived in the middle of her conversation with Gail's mom. She brought us the good news. Voice therapy worked, and Gail could talk now. That's amazing. Gail's mom said she's waiting for me at the park, so I went straight there. At the park, I saw Gail standing by a pond. Thank goodness you can talk again. I always knew you'd recover for your dream. My dream? It's turned to ashes. Then Gail told me that although she could talk again, her buttery smooth voice didn't return. Oh no, I was dead inside and tried my best to comfort her. I still believed she could overcome this and regain her voice, the same way she got over her stutter. Easy for you to say. Do you know what it's like to have a demon in your throat? I don't even recognize myself anymore. No, you can still... How about you? Can you get over your fear to achieve your dream? Come on now, do it! With each line, Gail put another step forward, pushing me closer to the edge, until there was only a few inches between me and the water. Go on, it's for your dream. What are you afraid of? Gail took one more step, and I fell into the pond. My trauma took over me. I panicked, thinking this was it. Then someone pulled me out. Robbie! You're insane! She could have died! Gail just ran away crying. Don't yell at her. I shouldn't have picked at her wound. Also, this should be a practice for when I become a marine biologist. Seriously? Or are you just scaring yourself even more? My family expects this much from me. If I gave up on my dream because of a tiny little accident from when I was 13, I only have myself to blame. Dream this, dream that. Are you sure that's what you really want to do, and not just a 6-year-old girl's dream? Robbie's words jolted me awake. It's true that I no longer enjoy studying as much as when I was learning with Pop Pop. Every ounce of effort I put out recently was solely for a far-fetched dream that I'm not even sure if I want anymore. I don't want to disappoint my parents, but I can't keep struggling like this for the rest of my life. But I've held on to this dream for so long and worked so hard for it. What do I do if I give up now? You'll figure it out. Take your time. I used to play football and was sure that I'd become an NFL player. Then at one point I realized that's not my thing, so I quit. And after trying out many different things, I fell in love with track. Change isn't the end of the world. I can't believe it took me this long to realize that it's too early for me to commit. Change is normal. But what if I never find my life's ultimate goal, and I'm just wasting time? Jeez, chill, man. You're making someone like me, who couldn't care less about school, actually enjoy studying. You're living life and putting some good into the world. Ain't no time wasted. No need to be Martin Scorsese. You mean marine biologist, right? But thank you. I needed that. I came home to see Gail crying to my very concerned parents. Mom jumped to embrace me when she saw that I was drenched.
Gail told me everything. Why didn't you tell us? We're so proud of you, and nothing would ever stop us.
So, Gail revealed my fear of water from that accident when I was 13, and how much I tried to overcome that fear from my childhood dream. It's so difficult for me to talk about it, mostly because I can't admit to myself that accident left a scar on me, so I'd suppressed my pain all this time. Telling both my parents about it now actually felt liberating. Luckily, they're very understanding and allowed me time to find my true calling. As for Gail, I'm sorry. I was so frustrated with myself that I put it all on you. It's not your fault. Turned out, when Gail ran off, she was hiding behind a bush nearby and overheard my conversation with Robbie. His surprisingly wise take moved her as well. Gail said she'd keep doing therapy for as long as it'd take. Yes, I believe in you. If voice therapy doesn't work out, becoming a heavy metal rock star doesn't sound too bad. Wow, really? I thought Robbie was talking for a second there. After that, it was business as usual, but there's less pressure on me. I actually made a new friend this year and got closer to my best friend. Gail's voice is improving, and she's also having fun exploring other avenues besides talk show host now. Summer came in the blink of an eye, and I decided to volunteer at a school for students with learning disabilities. I wanted to help other dyslexic people like me learn to the best of their ability, the same way Pop Pop helped me. It sounds like a good start for my own self-discovery journey. That could be my dream job. If it's not, I'll keep looking.
Have you ever questioned if your teacher hates you? I wish I didn't have to, but yep, my teacher hated my guts, and she went out of her way to make it very clear. I'm Lori, by the way. I'm 15 years old, and I guess you could say I kind of stand out because of my looks. People say I'm kind of pretty. Anyway, this year I started high school, although I only joined halfway through the year because I was off sick for 6 months with glandular fever. Yep, I had the dreaded mono. I was so tired of lying in bed feeling sorry for myself, so when the doctor said I could finally go back to school, I was over the moon. Little did I know what was in store for me. On my first day, I had to show all my teachers my hospital certificate to explain why I'd missed so much of the year. When I gave it to Miss Atkin, my math teacher, she smiled and said, "Welcome. Nice to see you feeling so much better." I smiled back at her and said, "Thank you." And I was about to walk away when suddenly she said, "Excuse me, you're Lori Hannison?" Her face looked all weird, and when I told her, "Yep, that was me," something inside her changed. She gave me a cold stare and told me to go to my seat immediately. I was confused a little bit about her attitude, but then I moved on from it. The most important thing was how I could catch up with my class. After missing 6 months of math, I was super behind and couldn't understand anything. My mom had to hire a tutor for me, and he was such a good teacher. Only after 3 months, I finally caught up with them. I had a notebook from our sessions with lots of notes inside, and whenever I couldn't remember something, I'd just look at it. Well, one day, I had it on my desk at school, and Miss Atkin caught me seeing my notes. She marched towards me, grabbed it, and slammed it down in front of me. She was so angry and got right up in my face and said, "Never, ever bring another teacher's notes to my class. Do you hear me?" As she said that, a little bit of spit flew out of her mouth and landed on my nose. I was horrified. Why was she so angry at me? It kinda scared me, and I thought maybe she was just angry because I wasn't as good at math as everyone else. After that, I didn't dare bring my notebook to class, but sometimes I still struggled, so I'd ask my friend who sat nearby to help me. Miss Atkin always caught me asking her and would put me in detention. One time I just sneezed too loud and she gave me detention. I mean, can you even believe? It annoyed me so much that I started to rebel. I'd often fall asleep in her class, and I seriously lost all motivation to do well. And that's not all. One day, I wore a new dress to class, and I swear I looked exactly like all the other girls at school. But Miss Atkin publicly embarrassed me by making me stand up in front of everyone, then said, "Girls and boys, Lori is a fine example of someone who pays more attention to what she wears than to studying. Don't be like Lori." I could feel myself blushing, and I wanted to cry. She was deliberately being mean to me, and I had no idea why. I was not that kind of girl. I normally loved studying, and I didn't care about clothes and shoes at all. I couldn't say anything, though, because if I spoke back to her, she'd give me a worse grade. What made it all even worse was that she was also the cheerleading coach, and she had her pack of cheerleaders following her around everywhere. One time I was standing in the hall talking with my friend Joe. We'd been best friends since we were like 3 years old, and we also live in the same street, so we'd grown up together. Joe always had my back. So we were standing there chatting when Miss Atkin and some of her fave students walked by. Suddenly I heard one of the girls say, "Oh look, surprise, surprise, it's Lori flirting with a boy again." Then one of the other girls said, "Seriously, she's such a fake. I mean, she's using her illness to get attention from boys. How pathetic." I couldn't believe it. Did they think I was deaf or something? They were the ones who were fake with their thick layers of makeup and all of their gossip and drama. I didn't really care that they were saying these things, but what really got to me was the way Miss Atkin laughed along with them. I actually saw her nod her head, so she agreed with them. I knew that wasn't okay, and Joe saw it too. He was so angry and grabbed my hand and said we had to report her to the principal. I stopped him though and said, "Just leave it. I am still the new girl here, and I don't want to cause any drama. And anyway, I have a plan." I smirked at him as I said this. So, Miss Atkin has this policy where if someone's phone rings in class, they have to answer it on speakerphone. And that policy includes her, too. So that day, I pretended to bump into her as she entered the class and watched as her phone dropped out of her hands. I quickly picked it up and apologized for being so clumsy, but at the same time, I unmuted it when she wasn't looking. Easy peasy. You see, I'd arranged for Joe to call her. This was going to be hilarious. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, her phone started ringing loudly. Her ringtone was Beyoncé's Single Ladies, and everyone burst out laughing. She freaked out and quickly grabbed her phone to cancel it. But Joe was persistent. He just kept calling, and everyone in class reminded her of the policy, so she had no choice but to answer it. Well, just wait for this. She answered, and suddenly Joe's voice filled the room. But he'd put on a funny accent to make himself sound older. Honey, don't forget about our secret date at our favorite hotel tonight. Miss Atkin looked like she wanted to die. She said, "Who is this? I don't know you." Then Joe said, "Come on, baby, what's up? Is your husband there?" Miss Atkin was now visibly shaking and said, "You've got the wrong number." But Joe wouldn't stop. "Ah, you're so cute. I'll see you tonight, baby. Get ready for a fun night. Wink, wink." At that, Miss Atkin hung up and the whole class was just deathly silent. I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from laughing. Joe had really outdone himself. However, I hadn't exactly thought it all through, because a couple of days later, Joe and I were about to walk home when he got called into the principal's office. I went with him, but they wouldn't let me in. I could see Miss Atkin in the room along with the principal and Joe. She'd somehow found out that it was Joe who'd called her, and now the principal said that Joe would be expelled and that his parents would need to come in for a meeting the following day. Oh my God, this was all my fault. When he came out, I rushed over and started apologizing, but Joe said, "Don't worry, I did it, so I'll take the responsibility." I was beside myself with guilt. I just kept saying, "Joe, no, this is my fault. I'm the one who should be expelled." But Joe wouldn't even listen to me. Well, that evening I told my parents the whole story. I was crying as I told them, and obviously they were angry, but they were also supportive. The next day, Joe's parents came for their meeting. The principal was there, and the school board, and of course, Miss Atkin. Luckily, my parents arrived just in time to interrupt the meeting, and we burst into the room. We told them the truth, how I'd been so ill and had to get a tutor, and that's why I carry that notebook. Then how Miss Atkin had treated me so badly and been so rude to me the whole time. I told them the phone call incident had been my fault and that Joe had just wanted to help me. Suddenly, Miss Atkin stood up and pointed at me and said, "I knew it was you. You spoiled brat. You should be expelled." What happened next was crazy. My mom jumped up and said, "How dare you speak to my daughter like that? You hate her because she's my daughter. Get over it, Angela. It's been years." Well, Miss Atkin ran towards my mom and said, "You're a horrible woman, and so is your daughter. You deserve each other." She was about to grab my mom, but my dad jumped up and stopped her. I didn't understand what was happening. Everyone was so shocked. The principal looked so puzzled. Then he told us all to go home and calm down. When we got home, my mom sat me down and said, "If you're being mistreated, you need to tell us. Don't suffer it out alone, okay?" I told my mom I was fine, and that school was great, but then my dad interrupted and said, "You're fine? Don't lie to us. You were almost expelled." Then my mom said, "Honey, calm down. It's not her fault. You saw her teacher. She's a demon." Then my dad just laughed, and I was so confused. Then he said, "Oh yeah, Lori, we should have told you this already, but Miss Atkin was at school with us." Then they told me how the three of them had gone to high school together, and both my mom and Miss Atkin had a crush on my dad, so they became sworn enemies. They fought all the time, and Miss Atkin had been expelled from school because of my mom. Of course, my dad hadn't known all of that back then, and he'd fallen in love with my mom. Wow, now I understand the real reason Miss Atkin treated me like that. She was obviously still angry at my mom, and when she'd seen my name, she hadn't been able to control her anger anymore, and she'd just released it all on me. My mom said, "Lori, you look exactly like me in high school. Because I was pretty, so many people were jealous." Then she turned to my dad, smiled, and said, "I can see that Joe is quite similar to your dad. You should be careful." At that, Mom and I burst out laughing. My dad was just speechless. And guess what? It all worked out in the end. Miss Atkin got reassigned to another school, and Joe and I were only suspended from school for 2 weeks. Now we're closer than ever, and there's definitely some real chemistry between us. Finally, high school is getting good again, huh?
Hi, my name is Mia, and I lived the first 14 years of my life trapped in a lie. I never left the house, and by that, I mean never. I grew up believing that I was allergic to the sun, and if I stayed out in it too long, I'd turn to dust. Dumb, I know, but I was just a kid, and I had no reason not to believe what my mom told me. On the rare occasions, I went out into the backyard, and my skin turned all blotchy and puffy. Looking back on it now, it's clear Mom had given me something to bring my skin out in a rash. But at the time, I honestly believed the sun was out to get me. I remember peering behind the curtain and watching the kids play out in the street. They looked like they were having so much fun, and I felt so sad that I couldn't join them. Mom charged into my room, quickly closed the curtain, and then she grabbed my shoulders and shouted at me.
Mia, never do that again. The sun can come in through the curtains and turn you to a crisp. Is that what you want?
I remember sobbing as I shook my head. I never did peer out at the other kids again after that. I could still hear them playing, so I would close my eyes and imagine that I was out there with them, playing chase and learning how to ride a bike. I so wanted that to be my reality. The problem was I didn't have that life. Instead, I was stuck inside with no friends. I'd never even touched the grass before. Mom homeschooled me. She took this really seriously and got really mad when I didn't understand something. One time, I gave the wrong answer to a math equation, so she screamed at me.
You're such an idiot! I've had enough of you.
Then she locked me in my room without dinner. Crazy, huh? But back then, I was so scared that from then, I didn't dare to ask her anything. It's always just Mom and me, and no one else in my house. She said my dad had died when I was a baby. Again, I had no reason not to believe her. I never had a phone to talk to anyone, and who did I have to talk to? Still, I remember being fascinated by this strange object she often pressed to her ear. Whenever she was on the phone, I believed she was talking to herself. Mom would lock me in the house while she went out. Then when she returned, she'd just throw me something to eat. A sandwich, a packet of potato chips, and sometimes she changed the meal to bread. She never really cooked. I'm not even sure if she knew how to. My house was a simple old house. There's not many things in it. No TV, no sofa, a basic kitchen. I mean, it looks like an abandoned house, but I thought it was normal because I'd not seen any other houses. My room was small, cold, and dark. I only had a hard mattress and some itchy old pillows. I didn't even have a bed cover. I used to shiver myself to sleep each night and dream of being out there playing with the other kids. Then, things got worse when I turned 10. Mom stormed into my room, gave me some food and a pile of books, and told me that I had to stay in my room from now on, so she knew I was safe. I put up with 4 years of this. It was horrible. She chucked my meals at me and gave me new books once a week. I felt so hungry and lonely all the time. Then one day, when evening arrived and she still hadn't fed me, my hunger pains got the better of me. So I tried the door, and to my surprise, it wasn't locked. So I snuck downstairs. That's when I saw Mom pacing the room, her phone in hand. She said,
"Yes, I know, Toby. Well, she's finally of age, so when are you coming to get her?"
Then she said,
"Tomorrow at 10 a.m. I will be counting the money."
I didn't know what was going on, but I knew something wasn't right. Then I heard Mom say,
"Well, I suppose I better go and feed her then."
I quickly darted upstairs and lay on my mattress. Mom appeared and passed me a sandwich and some water. She sat down next to me, which was odd, as she hardly ever did this. And she smiled at me as she said,
"We need to get you cleaned up, and I've bought you a new dress to wear."
"Why, Mom?" I asked her. Her smile faded into a scowl, and she kicked my mattress.
"Why do you always have to be so insolent?"
I didn't want to upset her further, so I didn't ask her anything else. Then the next day, Mom made me put the new dress on and let me out of my room. Then there was a knock at the door, and Mom brought this strange man in. I'd never interacted with anyone other than Mom before, so I just sat there, feeling afraid. He was around my mom's age and tall, really tall, and he had unkind eyes. He passed my mom an envelope, and she opened it and took out a lot of bits of paper. I know now that this was money, but back then, I didn't fully understand what it was. Mom counted it out, then nodded at him and said,
"She's all yours."
"Right. You're coming with me, sweetie."
He walked towards me. What? I stared at him, open-mouthed.
"Mia, you're going to live with this man now."
Mom said it like it was no big deal.
"That's what happens when you turn 14. You have to leave."
"But Mom, why? I don't know him. I won't go." Then she slapped me and shouted out loud,
"Go with him. I'm done with you."
That's when I realized that I couldn't live with this woman anymore. I ran out of the front door. Surely turning to dust was better than living with any of them. Only, as the sun touched my skin, it didn't burn. That's when I knew Mom had been lying to me all this time. So I started running without knowing where I was going. I could hear Mom and that Toby guy chasing and shouting after me, but I just kept on running. Every little sound freaked me out, as I didn't understand this world and the people in it. The next thing I remember is some woman shaking me and saying, "Sweetie, are you okay?" I was so afraid at first and curled up into a ball, but then she told me she wasn't going to hurt me, she just wanted to help me. She had kind eyes, not like Mom or that man, so I told her what had happened. She looked completely shocked, but she rang the police. So it turns out that when I was a baby, I was stolen. My mom isn't really my mom at all. She was some messed up woman who took me out of my pushchair and made some awful deal with that Toby man that he could buy me off her when I was 14. She didn't know my real parents. She just saw a chance to grab me, and she took it. It's horrible to think that she robbed me of a normal life, but I try not to dwell on this thought too much. I can't change the past. Then eventually, something amazing happened. My real parents were found. It was so emotional seeing them for the first time. They hugged me and we all just cried. They told me how they'd never stopped looking for me. And guess what? I found out I have a little sister called Izzy. I love hanging out with her and watching her play. She's the best. It's been hard. There's so much I've had to learn, such as how to interact with people and even how to eat with a knife and fork. My real parents have been so kind and patient with me. Now, at the age of 19, I have some sort of normal life. I still find many things confusing, and I struggle being around large crowds. I had to get used to sleeping on a bed, and I find computers the most confusing thing ever. But I managed to function in the big, wide world. As for my fake mom and Toby, well, they were both sentenced for their involvement in my kidnap, and are now in jail for a very long time. I have a chance at leading a normal life in the normal world, and even though what happened to me was horrible, I'm not going to let those cruel people ruin my life. I finally have a loving family, and I know that with their care and support, I can get through anything.
Hi, I'm Diane, and I'm 20 years old. I fell in love on the first day of college. I'm not even joking. I'd promised my mom I'd focus on my studies and wouldn't fall for any boys. But one look at Brett, and I broke that promise immediately. We had an instant connection, and pretty soon we were spending every waking moment together. I can't help but think that if I hadn't met him, maybe I'd never have found out the dark secret my mom and aunt had been hiding from me my whole life. You see, my mom raised me alone, and I had no idea who my dad was. Let's just say it seemed like my mom got around, so she really didn't want me to get into the same kind of situation as her. I decided to keep Brett a secret. She didn't need to know, right? When I went home for Christmas vacation, I missed Brett so much, but I couldn't let my mom know about him. So I'd wait until she went to bed before calling him. One night, she caught me, though. She must have gone to the bathroom, and suddenly I heard footsteps. She was standing right there. I didn't know how much she heard, but I was so embarrassed. I thought she'd grab the phone from me and tell me off, but instead, she just walked back to bed. It was so weird. In the morning, she was sitting at the kitchen table grinning and said, "Well, who is he then? Invite him over. Don't be shy." I couldn't believe it. I thought she'd freak out, but instead she wanted to meet him. She suggested we invited him over for dinner, as my aunt was also coming over that night. My mom and my aunt were like best friends, and had basically raised me together, so I was excited for her to meet Brett too. He took the bus that afternoon, as he was desperate to see me, and my mom said he could stay in the spare room. As soon as my mom saw Brett, she grinned at me and whispered how handsome he was. Then we sat down to dinner and started chatting. My mom had so many questions for him, and it was a bit awkward. She wouldn't shut up, and it made her seem so nosy. She asked where he'd grown up, and what his mom and dad did, and even asked for their names and stuff. Meanwhile, my aunt just sat there quietly, and then at one point she got up from the table and went out into the garden. My mom ran after her, and Brett looked at me worried. I had no idea what was wrong. 10 minutes later, my mom came in and her expression had totally changed. She went from being warm and friendly to totally strict and cold. She looked at both Brett and I and said she decided I was far too young to have a boyfriend staying over, and then asked Brett to leave. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was 20 years old. She was being so rude. So I said to her, "Mom, why? Please, can he just stay?" I was almost begging her, but she looked so serious and firm, and I knew she wasn't going to change her mind. Brett was even more shocked than me. I mean, it had been my mom who'd invited him in the first place, and now there she was, shooing him away. He quickly grabbed his stuff and ordered a taxi. I was so upset I didn't even say bye to him. I just burst into tears and felt so angry at my mom. Right after Brett left, I ran upstairs and locked myself in my room, and my mom stood on the other side begging to speak to me. She said there was something she needed to tell me. I refused to come out and instead sat on the floor on the other side of the door. I could hear my mom crying and knew this was serious. She said the reason she didn't want Brett to stay was because he was actually my half-brother. No, I didn't understand. I asked if my dad was also Brett's dad, and then I got angry. I thought my mom hadn't known who my dad was. I opened the door and I was about to start shouting at her when she told me what was really going on. I'd been adopted. Well, actually, I'd been kidnapped by my aunt when I was born. It's a long, shocking story, but basically my biological parents were this rich couple, but they were struggling to get pregnant. My biological mom had a best friend called Ashley, who she told everything to, but Ashley secretly had a crush on my dad. She seduced my dad until one night they slept together, and Ashley ended up getting pregnant. My dad was so happy and promised Ashley he'd help raise the baby, but that he couldn't divorce my mom. This made Ashley angry. She wanted my dad all to herself and wanted their kid to become the heir to his company. At the same time, my biological mom fell pregnant with me, and when my dad found out, he quickly forgot about Ashley and tried to forget about the mistake he'd made that one night. This, of course, made Ashley even more angry, but she still pretended to be friends with my mom. When my mom went into labor with me, my dad was away on a business trip, and Ashley paid someone to sneak into the hospital and kidnap me. That person turned out to be my aunt. She did it because she was desperate for cash, so she snuck in, dressed up as a nurse, and in the middle of the night stole me away. But she wasn't cold-blooded enough to just throw me away or leave me at an orphanage. So she took me to her sister's place and told her that she'd found me abandoned on the street. Her sister, who had never wanted to get married but had always wanted to be a mom, was so happy and decided to raise me. But then a few days later, it was all over the news, a missing baby. There was an exact description of what I'd been wearing, and even a photo of me just after I'd been born. There was no denying that I was the missing baby. My new mom confronted my aunt about it and found out the truth. My aunt said there was no way they could return me as my aunt had already spent all the money she'd been paid to cover some debts. And she didn't want to go to prison, so they decided to raise me as if I really was their own. That secret would still have been hidden from me if I hadn't brought Brett home. My mom was so shocked that I'd brought my dad and Ashley's son into her home and introduced him to her as my boyfriend. As my mom told me all of this, I just sat there frozen. This was absolutely unbelievable. I felt sick. They'd lied to me all these years, and even worse, my boyfriend was actually my half-brother. My whole life was one big mess. "I hate you, Mom, and I hate you too," I said to my aunt. "You helped that evil monster Ashley get what she wanted, and now you've ruined my life and taken away my family." My mom reached out to hug me, but I didn't want her near me. We both just sat there crying. She tried to calm me down and get me to relax. Then she sighed and said, "I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. Your whole life I've been trying to make it up to you. I thought my love for you would be enough. As for Ashley, well, I heard she didn't get what she wanted in the end." "Wait, why? I don't understand. But she successfully kidnapped me, right? I wiped my tears and looked at her. Yes, sweetie, but her main goal was to become your dad's wife. But that obviously didn't happen. Then she continued. After my aunt had kidnapped me, Ashley had given birth to Brett, and was so happy thinking that my parents no longer had a baby, and that my dad would now leave my mom and go live with her. But that's not what happened. Yes, their dear daughter was taken away, but my dad still stayed with my mom and loved her even more. My dad didn't get together with Ashley, but apparently my dad had still been helping raise Brett until now. There's definitely no bad blood between them because I've heard Brett talk about his dad quite a lot. Now there was only one thing for it. I had to find my biological parents and find out the rest of the story. They deserved to know I was alive. But now, what would I do about Brett? I'd have to break up with him somehow.
Hey, my name is Erin, and as you can see, I'm just your normal 18-year-old college girl. But my friends who know me well know that I'm not a girly girl. If given the choice of a shopping trip or beer pong, well, then there's no contest. All through high school, I was known as the prank queen. One time, this girl teased me about my sneakers, so I put a real-life spider in her lunchbox. She totally freaked out. It was so funny. Another time, my teacher gave me a totally unjust C on my essay, so when she wasn't looking, I placed her coffee mug upside down. As soon as she picked up the mug, coffee spilled all over the table and her clothes. I ended up with a week's worth of detention for that, but it was so worth it. So, yeah, even though I was out of high school now, my mischievous nature wasn't going anywhere. I didn't even feel like I needed to change or be more mature because my life was still going perfect. I always had my longtime boyfriend Zach and my bestie Jace on my side. We went to the same college together. Me and Jace even moved out to live independently. Trust me, college life was worth 12 years of waiting. I'm a sociable and active girl, while Zach is pretty handsome and great at sports, so we soon became a popular and beloved couple at college. We were even given prom king and prom queen crowns for freshmen. I could see people admired us any time we were together. It was like our love was a typical relationship that they always wished for. Only I knew that deep down inside, Zach's feelings for me were changing. We seemed to argue all the time, and at the root of it was the fact that I wasn't gentle like most other girls. Ugh. He used to see me as the most interesting and attractive girl in the world. What happened? Once, he took me to a party to celebrate his basketball team's win. We cheered a lot, and at a point I was so excited that I jumped on the table and drank wine with the boys. Everyone around was cheering with joy, but Zach wasn't happy. Then later, when I was getting in his car ready for him to drive me home, I asked him, "What's wrong? Aren't you happy you won?" He replied,
"You're an embarrassment. No one else's girlfriend was down in wine and cheering at the top of their voice. Why can't you just be gentle, like your friend Jace?"
I was fuming. So fuming, in fact, that I got out of his car, slammed the door shut, and walked home. It was such an outrage comparing me with another girl. Not to mention that Jace is the complete opposite of me. She's super quiet and introverted. You know what they say, opposites attract. This is so true, as Jace and I are the best of friends. But there's no way I could be gentle like her. If he wanted me to be more like her, why didn't he consider himself to be as sweet and smart as her boyfriend, Jay? I arrived home to find Jace sitting in tears on her bed. Oh, my gentle, weak girl. That night must be Black Friday for both of us. So I hugged her and asked her what was wrong. She replied, "Jay's changed, Erin. He doesn't like my meekness and wants a more vibrant relationship. In fact, he wants me to be more like you. He said I should be active and strong like you are. Now I don't know what to do." I said, "Oh, God, boys are so confusing." You know what? Zach said the same thing to me. He wants me to be gentle like you. Jace looked at me with surprising eyes. "Really? He did? I know, so hilarious, right? We have to do something to make them realize our true value. But what can we do? And once again, my prank-minded brain came up with an extraordinary idea. And I told her, I know, Jace. We can swap boyfriends. No, Aaron, I don't like Zach. And from when you have eyes for Jay? Hey, don't get it wrong. I just want my Zach. So here's the plan. We will annoy our boyfriends so they won't want to hang out with us for a few days. Then we'll take this time to strike and flirt with each other's boyfriends. Then, just when they thought they're getting close to us, we'll be super annoying. Then they'll realize just how amazing their actual girlfriends are. Talk about an amazing plan, huh? I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Jace was hesitant at first, but she eventually came up with my prank. As usual, our boys would soon come back as their old selves. I put my part of the plan into action by asking Zach over to watch the new episode of his favorite show on Netflix. Then, during the show, I ate popcorn really loudly, then continued to make comments and laugh while he was trying to concentrate. Eventually, he snapped and said, "Are you crazy? I'm trying to watch this." I replied, "What? You can't stand me anymore or something?" We argued a little bit, then he said, "You know what? You're annoying. Why can't you be nice, delicate, and gentle for just a moment?" Then he stormed out of the room and left. I immediately texted Jace. Mission completed. As for Jace, she went out with Jay. But whenever he asked her what she wanted to do or eat, etc., she replied, "Whatever," to everything. It soon drove him crazy because he didn't know what to do to please her. That was classic. When Jace kept shaking her head when he gave her options for what to eat, he got furious and drove her straight home. OMG, I couldn't stop laughing. So the first step was successful. Next, we needed to approach each other's boyfriends. A couple of days later, I found an excuse to meet Jay. He was a computer genius, so I messaged him on Facebook. "Hi, Jay. You know a lot about computers, right? Can you help me, as my laptop won't connect to the Wi-Fi and I have an assignment due?" Then he replied, Sure. Just take a picture of it and send it over." So I replied, "Can I bring it to your place? You gotta help me. I don't know what to do." Well then, of course, he said yes. So I wore a cute outfit and went over there. I kept touching his arm and praising him. Then, when he became more open to me, I started to tell him how lonely and empty I was as Zach and I were over.
"Oh yeah? How come?"
He raised an eyebrow. I sighed out. He thinks I'm too loud and boisterous. I tried to fake my tears. "Am I annoying, Jay?" He was surprised.
"No, you're not. You're an active, outgoing, and interesting girl. Don't let his judgment bother you."
Ha! So my tears worked. So I just pretended to cry harder. He frantically said he knew how to cheer me up. Then he took me to the amusement park. I laughed loudly in the middle of the roller coaster queue, let my ice cream smudge my face, and intentionally didn't wipe it clean. Then I demanded he win me a teddy on the beanbag throwing stall game. But every time he threw the beanbag, I shouted out and clung onto his arm. I knew boys hate being stuck and nagging all day. Like, really, really hate it. Soon, he would realize how awesome Jace was. Talking about Jace, she came to find Zach at the gym, but pretended like it was just a chance meeting. She asked him to show her how a treadmill worked, then used the same way as mine for Zach to ask her out. They went to the cinema to cheer her up. She refused to see the action film he was longing to see, as it was too noisy, said no to any movie he suggested, then eventually ended up in a chick flick. But right at the climax of the film, she complained it was too dark and crowded in there, and made him leave early. How ridiculous! LOL. He must be so annoyed. Then I told her to hit Zach where it hurt, his basketball match. Jace convinced him to take her along to his game, but she just sat there scrolling through her phone instead of watching the match. She didn't cheer him when he won a point, and immediately after the game finished, she asked him to take her home.
causing him to miss the post-game gathering. Good work, Jace. He'd come running back to me in no time. I know you're probably thinking this plan was crazy, but it really worked. Jace showed up on our doorstep with flowers for Jace. Their love story had been given the refreshment it needed. Now, I just had to wait for Zach to realize what he's been missing. Only, to my horror, Zach wasn't messaging me. He was still messaging Jace. She ended up sending a picture of her with Jay and told him she was happy with her boyfriend and didn't have time for annoying people like him. Then, the next day, Jace arrived home all flustered. She told me that Zach had been waiting for her outside of her class, then told her he wanted a chance to take her on a date. What? He was technically still my boyfriend. How could he do this to me? Worse still, he was ignoring all of my messages. So I showed up at his house and wouldn't budge until he answered the door. He looked sheepish as he said,
Aaron, our relationship hit a dead end. You're acting ridiculous, and I know you hung out with another guy behind my back. Meanwhile, a wonderful girl came to see me play basketball instead of you. She's the girl for me, not you.
At this point, I had to say the truth. Zach, you don't know what you're talking about right now. Listen, it was all just a setup so you could see what you were missing. It's worked for Jace. Her relationship is stronger than ever. And to my surprise, he replied,
I know. I overheard you discussing it with Jace in the library. At first, I found you so cute because you were trying to save our love, and I just wanted to please you, so I pretended not to know. But then, I realized something. I don't love you anymore. Instead, I love Jace. And thinking about it, I guess I have for a while. She's like a little, arrogant cat that I want to pamper and take care of. You know, I've always liked cats.
What? She's not even arrogant. She only acted that way as part of the plan, I shouted.
I don't care. All I know is I love her, not you.
Ugh! I can't believe it. What have I done? Because of my stupid prank, I've lost my boyfriend to my best friend. What am I meant to do now?
Hi, I'm Olive, and at the young age of just 23, I've decided I'm totally done with love. Why, you ask? Well, because all men are jerks, liars, and fraudsters. They're like magpies. They're always looking for something new and shiny to come along. So, your boyfriend is different? Yeah, whatever. I've heard it all before. I've believed it all before, too. Trust me. But as much as it sucks to hear that all guys are the same, I'll tell you why. It all began back in high school when I had a massive crush on this boy called Xavier. He was so dreamy, handsome, and talented. We bonded over our love for music, and we were in the same school choir together. Every musician has a muse, right? I believed that I was Xavier's only muse, and no one could replace me. In my eyes, he could do nothing wrong. Being around him filled me with butterflies, and I couldn't wait to go to college with him and share my life with him. But then, I caught him in the music room, kissing some other girl. I felt so broken and ran off. I just didn't understand how a boy who I thought cared about me could hurt me so badly. I turned into a zombie version of myself. I could barely eat anything, and I refused to go to school as there's no way I could face seeing him with her. In the end, my mom was so concerned about me that she let me change schools. The problem was that it might have been a new school, but it was still full of jerky guys. I started dating this boy called Justin, but then he broke up with me for my friend Rosie. I had to endure sitting alone in the canteen and watching them feed each other yogurt. Gross. I thought that going to college would change my bad luck with guys and that they'd be more grown up about relationships. But no, turns out my first college boyfriend, Thomas, was two-timing me the whole time. I was clearly a magnet for bad guys, so I decided to use it to my advantage. In fact, their bad behavior is so predictable that I've managed to build a career on it. So after I graduated from college with a degree in business administration, I convinced my family to lend me money so I could open up my love trap business. Do you want to find out if your boyfriend's loyal or not? Well, my business can help with that. Hire me, and I can tell you if you're wasting your time with that charming guy or if he's one in a zillion. This isn't an investigation service or your regular kind of honey trap company. No. Instead, I help my clients determine if their partner is faithful or not, even before he actually has an affair with someone. Why waste your time and effort with a man who has a wandering eye? It's simple, really. If your partner likes tall brunettes, I'll send a beautiful girl fitting this description over to the place he'll be at. Naturally, I have different service packages to choose from to suit all budgets. For instance, level 1 is a brief encounter in a chosen location, while level 3 ups the stakes. Trust me, few guys can resist a super sexy woman. If your boyfriend passed our challenges, congratulations. But if he didn't, then we'd have pictures, videos, and messages to back it up. Of course, my client's discretion was the utmost importance to me. So, if questioned, then my girls would deny being hired, and who by? And they'd never go beyond the limits or allow themselves to develop feelings for the guy. As crazy as it sounds, I was doing really well with this job. Business was booming, and although seeing my clients burst into tears when I handed them pictures of their guy flirting with one of my girls wasn't fun, exposing a cheater made me feel satisfied. Then everything changed when Amy showed up at my office. She seemed like any normal client at first. She loved her boyfriend, but she just wasn't fully sure if she could trust him. A normal, boring case. At least, I thought it was until I opened up the folder with the information about her boyfriend. There, staring back at me, was a picture of Xavier. Whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Still, I kept my cool, smiled sweetly at Amy, and said, "Leave it to me." As if I was going to turn down this job and a large sum of money just because I had history with Xavier. Amy didn't know that, and she didn't need to. I'd send another girl along, catch him out, then voila. Amy would see what a jerk he was. Only that evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and looked through his folder. Geez, I'd forgotten just how handsome he was. By my third glass of wine, I decided that no one knew Xavier better than me. Therefore, I needed to use myself as bait and catch him out. The next evening, I put on my favorite dress and I went to the bar Amy said he'd be at. There he was, sitting at the bar and flirting with the pretty bartender. Some things never change. Then he turned and saw me. He looked shocked and said, "Olive? Is that you?" "Oh, hi, Xavier," I smiled bitterly. "The last time I saw you, weren't you having fun with your new muse in the music room?" He looked confused and said he didn't understand what I was talking about, so I gave him a refresher. I thought he'd be ashamed that I caught him out as a cheater, but then he responded, "No, you've got the wrong idea. We were just practicing for the school play when she tried to kiss me all of the sudden. I bet you didn't stay until the next moment to see me push her away and tell her I already had my girlfriend. You're my one and only Olive, my muse." Suddenly, I felt so stupid that I didn't ask him directly that day, and just ran away without a word. If I had, then I could have had my dream life with him, and never had to experience those jerk guys. As I looked into his dreamy eyes, I realized that I still loved him, and I knew he loved me too. That Amy girl wasn't right for him. So when he asked me to go back to a hotel room with him, I didn't think twice about saying yes. After that, we started dating, and it felt good being able to trust a guy again. He was always spoiling me with romantic weekend trips and taking me out to expensive restaurants. But then one night, when I was with him at a hotel, and he was out of the room, his phone beeped, and I saw a message from Amy pop up. So when he returned, I used this as my chance to ask him, "Who's Amy?" He touched my hand and told me that she was just some silly girl he was pretending to date so her father's company would hire him for a big job. He promised that after his business contract ended, he wouldn't talk to her again. I'd failed to trust Xavier once before, and I wasn't about to do it again. Also, I need to help him with his business. So when Amy came to my office, I put on a smile and said, "Congrats, Xavier's one of the good guys." "Is that right?" She raised an eyebrow. Then she threw a pile of photos on the table between us. There were pictures of me and Xavier at the bar, at the mall, on our recent short trip away, and in a hotel foyer. Talk about a shocker. It turns out Amy wasn't as naive as I thought she was. She scowled at me and said, "Does your place even have rules for going to hotels with the customer's boyfriend to challenge him? Prepare yourself to go to courts, fraudsters." She left, leaving me trembling with fear. I was about to lose my business, and it was all my own fault. But at least I still had Xavier, the love of my life, right? I called him up in tears and expected him to comfort me. Instead, he yelled out, "You ruined it all, you loser! How dare you let Amy know about your embarrassing affair? Do you really think I'd leave a good girl like Amy for someone awful like you? Prepare for the trial, since my testimony will put you at a disadvantage." Now, I have a ruined career and a dented pride. I'm tired and exhausted, and the last remaining belief in love I had has been lost forever. But worse still, I don't trust myself. I hate the fact that I fell for Xavier's charms not once, but twice. But if I manage to get through this lawsuit without losing everything, then I want to start a new business. I don't want to be bitter forever. Instead, I want to do something with my life. Something that doesn't involve love, heartbreak, or anything in between, as I'm keeping my heart a no-go zone from now on. Hi, it's me again, Diane. In part 2 of my story, I started to work in my parents' company, but I didn't have the courage to tell them the truth that I was their long-lost daughter. Fortunately, one day, I found out that Brett, my boyfriend, wasn't my half-brother, and that his mom, Ashley, had been lying this whole time. But I didn't want to unveil the truth because I didn't want Brett to get hurt. That was until the day I bumped into Ashley. In the store, I watched as she looked at the photo of me and my mom and aunt from when I was just a baby, and the look of recognition on her face as she realized my aunt was the kidnapper she hired nearly 20 years ago. She looked at me terrified. Are you that baby? Are you also the one I saw in the company earlier this afternoon? What are you doing with Brett and his dad there? Did you know everything? She shot questions at me and didn't even wait for my response. Instead, she just started yelling at me, claiming that I was plotting to get revenge on her for stealing my life away from me. I knew it was pointless trying to explain to her, so I said nothing and watched as she ran out of the store without buying anything. The next day when I got to the company, I found out that Brett had suddenly disappeared. He hadn't come to work, and no one could get in touch with him. My dad told me that he'd gone to see his mom the night before, and after that, he hadn't come home. Oh my God, his mom! After he'd bumped into me, had she done something bad to him? I couldn't bear it. My aunt had given me Ashley's address, so I went there to find out what was going on. As soon as she opened the door, I asked her where Brett was. And she just smirked at me and said she told him I was his half-sister and that I was preparing to kick him out of my dad's family. So she said he must have run away because he was so disgusted by me. I felt so angry I wanted to scream. Ashley was ruining everything. She even said to me, "You can't fool me. It's no coincidence that you're working in your dad's company and that you've seduced Brett. You're doing all of this on purpose." Well, that just made me even angrier. I said to her, "I know Brett isn't my dad's son. I did a DNA test, and you're lucky I haven't said anything to either of them, but I will now. You better prepare yourself for the consequences." Then I left, leaving her standing there looking angry. I went straight to my parents' house to tell them before Ashley could beat me there to tell them lies. They let me in straight away and asked me what was going on and if it was about Brett. I nodded and took out all the evidence I'd prepared. This was the moment of truth. I was so nervous. I gave them the DNA results of Brett and my dad, then the baby photo of me, and then a letter my aunt had written confessing about how Ashley had hired her to kidnap me. My parents were shocked, of course, and had a lot of questions, but soon it all became clear and we all started crying. It was just so overwhelming. I even told them about what Ashley had told Brett the night before and begged them to believe me that I didn't do it all on purpose. Of course they said they believed me, and I was relieved. But the very next day, you won't believe what Ashley told them. My parents went straight to Ashley's the next day to confront her, and she couldn't deny it because there was so much evidence. But then she told my parents that she had been feeling so guilty. So she was the one who'd gotten in touch with my aunt and encouraged her to tell me the truth and then help me find my parents. After my parents told me this, I told them Ashley was lying. She was trying to make herself look like an angel when she was none other than the devil. I suggested to my parents we sue her or something, And then a few days later, Ashley got in touch with me. She'd found out where I lived, and as soon as I let her in, she begged me not to sue her. She'd obviously already received a warning letter from my parents' lawyer. She said she had a family to care for and didn't want them to know about her past. Then she promised me she'd never come near me or my family again. I was sick of her now and asked her to leave. But then she apologized again, and she really regretted everything she'd told Brett and that she'd gone to see him. What? Where did you find him? I asked. And she told me that she found him at her parents' house, where she and Brett had lived when he was little before she'd gotten married. Oh, that's right. I knew Brett loved his grandparents so much and often visited them. I hadn't even thought that that was where he could be. Then she told me that Brett hadn't disappeared because he was disgusted by me. It was because he felt so guilty about everything that had happened. She told me she'd already gone to see him and confessed because she wanted to at least be seen as an honest mother in her son's eyes. After I told Brett that he isn't your dad's son, he got so angry and shouted at me that he hated me and never wanted to see me again. It crushed me. Ashley told me and started to cry. Please forgive me, Diane, she continued. I've lost Brett. Surely that's punishment enough for everything I've done. I thought that what I did would help Brett so he could grow up in a wealthy family. But turns out all I did was hurt the people around me, especially Brett. Can you guess what I did next? I went to meet my parents and asked them to remove all accusations against Ashley. You're probably wondering why I changed my tune so quickly. Well, I felt like enough revenge had already happened, and I couldn't bear anyone suffering anymore. All I'd ever wanted was to have a peaceful life, and revenge only satisfies us for a second. It doesn't make us happy in the long term. After that, Ashley came to apologize to my parents, and swore she'd completely disappear from our life after that. Then she gave us Brett's grandparents' address and asked us not to put any blame on Brett. Then she left. Poor Brett. When I went to meet him, it was clear he was the one who'd been hurt most by all of this. His grandparents told me that after Ashley had revealed the truth to him, he'd lock himself up in his room and hadn't come out. I knocked on his door and begged him to let me in. After a while, he opened the door, and I couldn't believe how he looked. He'd become so skinny, and his eyes were so sad. It made me so upset to see him like this. He said to me that he blamed himself for everything. For the big lie my life had been, for my parents' loss of their only child, and for the way we'd broken up. He truly believed all of this was because of him and his mom. I hugged him and told him none of this was his fault, and I asked him to come back to my parents' house because we all missed him so much. He eventually agreed, but I could see he was nervous, especially when both my parents knew that Brett wasn't related to them by blood. But my parents welcomed him back into the house. However, I could see they were feeling a bit awkward about what to say, so I stood up and said to them, even though you guys aren't actually related, you've still been so happy together. Just like my adoptive mom, she ended up getting a daughter she might never have had, and you got a son that brought you so much joy. Sure, there were lots of lies, but we were still happy, right? Believe it or not, everything worked out after that. Brett and I went back to school, and we've both decided to go work at my parents' company after graduation. I have chosen to move in with my parents, but of course, I still visit my adoptive mom and aunt all the time. My adoptive mom understands that this is important for me, so that I can get to know my parents properly and catch up on lost time. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. I asked my parents to forgive my adoptive mom and aunt, because even though they acted wrongly in the past, they still raised me and did such an amazing job. As for Brett, he moved out into his own place, but still visits my parents all the time. However, Brett and I are no longer dating. It wasn't because of my parents, though. Let's be honest, it would just be too weird if we kept dating after everything we'd been through. It was a hard decision for us both, but it's for the best. We both need to move on so that we can have a better future. And hey, at least we can still be friends, and soon, colleagues too.
Hi, my name's Kat, which is short for Catherine, but only my mom calls me that. My dad's Indian, and my mom's American. They met back when he was working over here. Then they fell in love, got married, and had me. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, and they split up before I was born. In India, when you marry, it's meant to be for life, but still, my parents got divorced. So the reason for that must have been really serious. So serious that till this day, I still don't know. Every time I asked about it, my parents would just ignore me and change the subject. Anyway, I've always lived with my mom, but my dad lives close by. Most kids from broken homes hate not having both parents around all the time, but this never bothered me. Don't get me wrong, I love my dad and all, but I guess I couldn't miss what I didn't know. Besides, I had far bigger problems to deal with. Okay, so don't laugh, hear me out. I'm a tomboy, a fact which my mom hates. Yep, I detest wearing skirts and dresses, or anything girly and sparkly. Yuck! Give me basketball shorts and a baggy t-shirt any day. Also, I don't understand why some girls spend ages doing their makeup. Why would I want to make myself look like some living doll just to impress people? Please. I didn't get on that well with other girls. I guess I just had nothing in common with them. I didn't care about shopping and watching rom-coms. Nope. I'd much rather be kicking a ball around or playing video games. My best friend's a boy called Harry, and I've known him for forever. He's the one who taught me how to ride a skateboard. Talk about an adrenaline buzz. Now I pretty much go everywhere on one. I'm like a real-life Bart Simpson. For my whole life, my mom's given me disapproving looks. From the time when I only invited boys to my 6th birthday party, tore the arms off the dolls she gave me, and point-blank refused to move when she booked me in for ballet classes. I just wasn't a tea time with dolls and teddy bears kind of girl, and I didn't understand why she couldn't just buy me trucks and action figures instead. Then on top of that, Mom only dressed me up in skirts and dresses. I had no option but to wear them and endure school feeling so uncomfortable. I mean, have you tried playing soccer in a frilly dress? Talk about ridiculous. The other boys always had to wait for me to straighten out my skirt or try and find the hairpins that kept tumbling out of my hair. I mean, seriously, those things were so lame. By the time I reached 12, I was done wearing girly clothes just to please my mom, so I wore comfy, passed-down clothes that I got from my cousins beneath the hideous dresses and took them off en route to school. I was also so sick of my long, boring hair, so one day I snuck into the barber's after school and got an undercut. Then one evening, I was chilling on the couch when Mom pointed at my hair and in a horrified voice said, "Catherine, what have you done to yourself?" I hadn't realized the way I was lying meant some of my undercut was on show. I just shrugged and replied, "It's my hair, so I can do what I want with it." "Why would you want to make yourself look ugly?" she shouted. "It's not ugly. It's cool." My mom looked so shocked. She grounded me for a month, and during that time, she barely spoke to me. The quarreling didn't end there. Over the next few years, it seemed like every little thing I did annoyed her. From chewing on gum to refusing to wear a dress to my cousin's wedding, you name it, it made her mad. On loads of occasions, she shouted at me that she wished I was normal. I didn't get it. My friends and teachers didn't treat me like I was an alien. So why did my mom? One time, when I was about to leave and go and skateboard with Harry, she actually accused me of being a lesbian. I just rolled my eyes at this. For the record, I'm not. I've had crushes on boys before. Anyway, my dad was a lot more chilled than Mom. He's totally okay with me being a tomboy. One time, he even sent me a gift box with this really cool sports jersey and shorts in it. I stuck it in my wardrobe to hide it from Mom, but she still managed to find it and threw it all in the trash. As I questioned her why she did that, she replied, "If you want to live like a boy that much, you should move in with your dad." This made me so mad, so I packed a bag and went to Dad's place. He was bugged out by what my mom had done, but still, he told me I should forgive her and that I couldn't live here for good with him, as he couldn't be home all the time and take care of me like Mom did. Yeah, right. More like he knew Mom would never let this happen. It's like she hated me, but she still wanted me around so she had someone to moan at. I stayed with Dad for a few days until he had to go on a business trip. Then I had to reluctantly go home, though I was still kind of sulky at my mom. Then came the bombshell as I just arrived home. Mom sat me down and told me that she was dating some new guy called Max. Wow. I knew Mom and I weren't close, but I had no idea she'd been dating some new dude. We're planning the wedding, and of course I want you to be my bridesmaid, but you'll have to wear a dress. What? She'd known the guy for 5 minutes, and now she was marrying him? Yeah, whatever, I replied. My mom looked surprised. That's all? You seriously have no problem with this? I got up and walked upstairs to my room while saying, Yeah, Mom, I'm okay with it. I support you doing what you like, not like you who always scolds me for my preferences. I could sense my mom being flustered without looking back. Ha! I'd won this round. So, Max moved in with his teenage daughter, Taylor, who's a year younger than me and goes to the same school. Talk about a Barbie. All she seems to be is a mass of shiny blonde hair and pink everything. Like, seriously, her rucksack, bed covers, curtains, even her phone's pink. But it's fine. Everyone has their own taste, so, whatever. Actually, it turns out that this new addition to the family wasn't as bad as I thought. Max is an okay guy who never looks down on me or comments on my tomboy ways. And about my mom, her focus towards me decreased. I was basically invisible to her, now she had Taylor around. You think I'd be mad jealous, huh? Actually, no. Not at all. I was glad of the peace. But then Mom started comparing me to that brat, saying how I should be more like her as we were both girls, but I acted like a little demon. What? Taylor was so pathetic. She screamed when she saw a roach in the kitchen and refused to get down from the worktop until it had been removed. Don't even get me started on how she acted like she couldn't reach the top shelves in the school's library, so other boys had to help her. Ugh, sickening. Then things got heated when Taylor stormed into my room and asked me to come down for dinner. Well, I probably was playing my music too loudly to hear her knocking on my door, but still, she wasn't welcome here. Then she took a quick look around my room. Okay, I'm not exactly the most organized person, but I know exactly where things are. I asked her, What are you gawping at? Nothing, she bluffed. Hey, why don't we go to the mall tomorrow? Let's go buy something cute. I need new clothes, and looks like you could use some help too. I'm good, thanks. Crop tops aren't really my style. I'm not that much of a tryhard. I smirked at her. Oh, please. You wish you were like me. Look at yourself. You have the sense of fashion of a 5-year-old boy. That's so childish. Who wears cargo pants anymore? Beats being a flamboyant ugly duckling who hides behind a zillion layers of pink glitter and foundation. Well, at least this ugly duckling will soon become a swan. But you're stuck being a nobody forever. No wonder Mom hates you. I stared at her with hatred. Who was she to judge me in my own house? I needed to teach this brat a lesson. I charged towards her and yanked back her hair. She yelled at me to stop. Then at that moment, my mother appeared and shouted at me, Catherine, stop this at once! You need to grow up. Me? I shouted back. She just told me you don't love me. Well, she has a point. No one could love someone who acts like this. Look in the mirror. Taylor only said what we're all thinking. You're 17 already, for God's sakes. Grow up a little and give me a break. What was Mom saying? She was taking the side of some random girl that only just moved in over her actual daughter? Great. There's zero use fighting with these close-minded morons. I let go of Taylor and pushed her and my mom out of my room, screaming at them, Fine! You two go and live happily ever after in your pink, fake, girly world. Then I slammed the door in their dumb faces. I was so done with them. I was so done with everything. Hey, it's me, Kat. I'm back to fill you in on the next part of my drama-filled life. So, me and my mom have never got on that well. She hates my tomboy ways and wishes I was a girl. So when her new fiancé Max moved in with his Barbie doll daughter Taylor, well, my mom instantly loved her more than me. During an argument, she even told me that she couldn't love someone like me and that I should grow up. How could my mom say that to my face? And especially in front of that little brat Taylor. I was so angry that I shut myself in my room that night and skipped dinner. But then, around 3 a.m., my stomach wouldn't quit growling, so I snuck down to the kitchen, and surprise, surprise, there was no leftover food for me at all. Great. Clearly, they didn't view me as a part of this family anymore, and wanted me to starve to death. I couldn't fall back asleep after that, so as soon as the sun came up, I called my best friend Harry up early. He answered the phone half asleep. "What?" I told him to rise and shine, as I needed saving from my nightmare of a home life. Oh, and I also told him to bring food. He muttered out "Yeah, fine." At least leaving early meant I wouldn't have to face Mom and Taylor. As soon as I got into Harry's car, he threw me a sandwich and asked what was wrong. And I told him how Taylor's basically Nightmare Barbie. He grinned at me. "Yeah? What'd she do? Steal all your food?" Trust him to make a joke out of my distress. Anyways, I told him everything that had happened while munching on the sandwich. He replied, "Come on, Kat. Like you're gonna let some 16-year-old get the better of you? How about I come over after school and suss out the situation? I'll fight off this kid for you." I jokingly replied, "Okay, I guess that might help keep the peace, as for some reason my mom seems to like you." So Harry came around, and naturally, my mom was all over him, telling him how handsome he is and demanding he stay for dinner. Talk about cringe. Then I had to listen to Mom telling him how she didn't understand me and how he should talk some sense into me. Hello? I was still in the room. Then Taylor arrived home all shiny-haired and girly. I swear my mom's face lit up just by seeing her. And worse still, so did Harry's. Ugh! Oh, Harry, have you met Taylor? Kat's sister. She goes to the same school as you guys. "Hi, Taylor. I've definitely seen you around, but I didn't know you were Kat's sister. She wouldn't tell me." He elbowed me while being all smiley to her. In that whiny voice of hers, Taylor replied, "Nice to meet you, Harry. Are you Kat's boyfriend?" We all burst out laughing. Then my mom chimed in, "Honey, I wish, but no. Your sister seems to be allergic to love. But you two would make a lovely couple." What on earth? They both laughed, and Harry replied, "I'd love to, but such a pretty girl like Taylor wouldn't lay an eye on me." Great. Thanks, Harry. As if Taylor isn't big-headed enough. I slyly kicked Harry's leg and gave him a dirty look. After dinner, me and Harry went to play video games in my room. As soon as I closed the door, he told me that Taylor seemed all right. Was he blinded by her Barbie looks or something? I was so mad that I slammed down my game's controller and told him he sucked. Ugh! Why did everyone treat me like such a joke? So, what if I didn't dress up girly? I still had feelings. They knew nothing about me. I actually had a huge crush on this boy at school called Garrett. He was on the boys' soccer team, and he was so talented. I totally swooned out loud when he scored 3 goals in a row. I usually didn't like jocks. As a member of the girls' soccer team, our teams often trained together, and I had to put up with them showing off to impress girls, while in reality, they couldn't actually play, and they skipped practice all the time to go partying. Garrett was different. He totally shined amongst those useless guys. I took the initiative to talk to him. Turns out, Garrett and I had loads in common. We instantly clicked and talked non-stop about soccer, skateboarding, and other stuff. Okay, so there was one problem. He seemed to be interested in the cheerleader type of girl. Once he even admitted his celebrity crush was Selena Gomez. Yeah, I know. She's as girly as you can get. That got me thinking a lot. I definitely wouldn't change who I was, but maybe a little makeover wouldn't hurt, right? I told Harry about it, and he just told me it was stupid, and he wasn't really supportive, which was strange for him, but whatever. So Harry worked evenings and weekends at the burger joint in the mall. I knew it was just so he could check out the girls going into the clothes shop opposite. I knew if I was going to win Garrett's heart, then I'd need to change my style, so I started visiting Harry more often at work. I'd sit there munching on free fries while watching the girly girls shop, so I could get the gist of the in trends and stuff. Then I stole my mom's lip gloss and some glittery eyeshadow and put it on for school. I even started wearing this plaid purple skirt Mom bought for me. I mean, at least it was sort of edgy, right? Though I had nothing other than my collection of oversized tees to go with it, but whatever. It was girly enough. OMG. OMG! Wearing a skirt is hard work. I couldn't run as fast or jump up to grab something off the top shelf. I also kept on forgetting I was wearing a skirt and sitting with my legs apart. Oops! My plan was working though, as Garrett started sitting with me and Harry at lunch. Oh, and one time when I was struggling to run in a skirt, he passed me his jacket to tie around my waist. It gets even better. He invited me to his soccer team party. OMG! Talk about hitting the jackpot. This meant he liked me, right? That was it. I decided that the party will be my grand finale. I'd get a total makeover and confess my feelings to him while there. Finally, the day of the party arrived, so I put my awesome plan into action. Okay, so Mom's lousy makeup just wasn't cutting it, so I went into the drugstore and used up the testers. I even packed a pair of Mom's high heels with me. Now all I needed was a dress. Obviously, I wasn't going to buy one for keeps. No, I'd wear them for the party and return it the next day. All of my spying taught me one thing. Floral print was the in thing right now. So I bought this flowy floral dress in my size and went to the mall restrooms to try it on, so I had more privacy. I put the high heels on and zipped up the dress, but it seemed a little tight. Jeez, talk about tiring. I could barely reach the zipper on my back. After, 5 minutes of struggling, I was impatient and used up all of my force to pull it up. Done. Finally! But, uh-oh, my hair was stuck in between the zipper! Ugh, stupid long hair. I began to panic. I was completely stuck. Harry was on shift in the burger joint, so I sent him an emergency message. He sent me 5 crying with laughter emojis back, but he also said he'd be straight over. I couldn't expect him to come into the girls' restrooms, so I had to try and walk out into the mall foyer. My hair was stuck, so I had my face up to the sky and every step was shaky due to the high heels. My 2 arms went straight out to navigate since I couldn't properly see the way. I must have looked like a zombie. People were whispering and laughing. It flustered me, and I tripped. The laughters were even louder now, and I couldn't even get up. I laid there in a weird position, feeling so helpless as anger and embarrassment filled me up. Thank God I heard a familiar voice. "Kat, are you okay?" Harry to the rescue. Finally! He shooed everyone away, took the heels off my feet, and helped me get up. Then he said, "Oh my God, Kat, what have you done? Seriously, why are you making a fool of yourself just because of some jock? You've lost yourself, Kat." He kept on grumbling as he tried to fix the zipper. Great, as if I wasn't already miserable enough. He was treating me just like my mom did. I was so angry, I pushed him out of my way as soon as he was done with the zipper, then stomped off. I was so mad. I washed all of the makeup off my face, changed back to my normal clothes, and went home. No more party or whatever. I was done. As soon as I reached home, I ran straight to my room and saw a brand new dress on my bed. What? I never wanted to see one of those evil things again. I grabbed the dress and stormed downstairs and started screaming at Mom. "I won't wear this. I hate it. I will never be like Little Miss Perfect Taylor, so please stop." I expected Mom to yell back, but to my surprise, she didn't. She told me that Harry had messaged her telling her what had happened. Oh my God, Harry, you snitch! I pulled out my phone and was about to dial the number to yell at him. Mom stopped me and continued. "He's worried about you, honey, so he asked me to help you out. I saw this dress in a shop the other day and bought it for you to wear to my wedding, but I think today is a special occasion too. Put it on and go tell that boy you like him." Mom hugged me. Wow, talk about an emotional roller coaster. I was so touched and embarrassed about my thoughts and actions, so I agreed to let Mom help me curl my hair and apply my makeup, and I wore the dress she bought. I actually looked pretty cute, not gonna lie. She looked so happy and wished me good luck as I walked out of the house in ballet pumps, not high heels. Those things are evil. The party wasn't till later, so I texted Garrett and told him to meet me at the coffee shop around the corner. Everything was set. There's only one last step left. Hey guys, Stephanie here. I have a question for you. promise to be honest, okay? Have you ever had a crush on one of your teachers? If yes, I guess you could somehow relate to my story. I'm going to tell you all about my super fine boyfriend, Joseph. I put so much effort into winning him over, but trust me, he was worth every second. So this all began last year when I was a sophomore at college, majoring in performing arts. When it came to boys my own age, talk about boring. I didn't pay much attention to them as they were so childish and honestly, they just annoyed me. If I had to choose between dating some immature jerk or staying single forever, there was no contest. One day, I was over at my bestie Susie's place. We've been friends since forever, and even though we now went to different colleges, we still met up loads. As we were eating Susie's delicious homemade burgers, we talked about college, outfits, boys, that kind of thing. That's when Susie told me all about the new professor at her college called Joseph. She described him as extremely handsome, tall, intelligent, sporty, and he owned a motorcycle. He sounded far too good to be true, so I convinced myself there must be a catch. Perhaps he had bad acne, or maybe he had a wife and 3 kids or something. He doesn't have acne, he's not married, and he looks like this. She held up her phone. On it was the image of a seriously hot guy. I grabbed the phone off her and scrolled through his social media pictures. Jeez, this guy was so fine. So what if I'd never met him? I knew I needed to make him mine. I needed a plan, so I begged Susie to help me out. She thought I was crazy, but hey, she'd been besties with me forever, so she knew I like to go all out on things. She snuck me into class with her. It was economics. Boring, but staring at Joseph was worth it, and his voice was so dreamy. I knew I couldn't just sit there. I needed to make Joseph notice me. After class, I walked over to him, swished back my hair, and in my cutest voice said, "Hey, great class, but there are a few points I'm struggling to understand. Perhaps you could help me out?" He looked a bit awkward, but he agreed. I blabbed out a few questions about the class, and he waffled out some answers which I didn't understand. I knew I'd have to do better than this to keep his attention, so I continued to sneak into the class. One time, I pretended to fall out of my chair and feigned blacking out. I even dabbed white powder under my eyes before class so I looked extra weary. My hope was that he'd rush over to me and carry me to the infirmary. But no, some stupid other guy had taken that chance from him. Worse still, this doofus was so clumsy that as he was carrying me through the doorway, he knocked my arm against the door frame. Ouch! I bit down on my lip and kept my eyes closed. Jeez, why had my amazing plan turned into a disaster? Ugh. I opened my eyes just in time to witness the nurse coming at me with a huge needle. I screamed out, jumped off the bed, and told her I was feeling much better now. Despite my failed plan in pretending to be sick, I immediately came up with another one. One day, I punctured my own bike tire, then pretended to sadly walk my bike to the parking lot and asked Joseph to give me a lift. He shook his head, said he was too busy, then whizzed off on his motorcycle. I stood there speechless. Worse still, I had to walk my bike all the way home. Another time, I waited until it was just him and me left in class. Then, on my way past him, I dropped my books. Then I said, "Oh no! How clumsy of me," as I bent down to pick them up. Oh yeah, I was also wearing my tightest pair of jeans. I didn't think that there's any way he could resist me in those, but he didn't even help me pick my books up. Instead, he coughed to clear his voice, then said,
"Can you hurry up, please? It's my lunch break, and I haven't eaten since breakfast."
Typical. I was there looking sexy, and all he could think about was his stomach. I wasn't going to give up now. I hadn't attended a bunch of yawn-inducing economics lectures for nothing. So, thanks to my social media snooping, I knew Joseph's birthday was coming up. On his actual birthday, I had a class with him. Talk about fate! So, I brought him a cake and made the entire class sing happy birthday to him. Then I announced I had a special birthday surprise for him, and I sang out Louis Capaldi's "Someone You Loved." The rest of the class whooped and cheered, but he just looked down at his desk. Okay, so this was getting frustrating. What did I need to do to get this guy's attention? Jeez, I'd tried everything already. That Friday, one of Susie's college friends was having a party, so I tagged along. I sat in the corner and moaned out to Susie how I felt like I was getting nowhere with Joseph. I just didn't get it. Whatever I did, he just didn't seem bothered. I moaned out, "Susie, should I keep flirting with him?" He didn't even lay an eye on me. He was such a tough guy, you know? Like an old boot. In fact, a rock had more personality than he did. Then Susie gave me a sign, but I kept saying, and maybe he was gay or something? Like, you see, he showed no interest in girls. That's when Susie hit my arm, and when I looked up, I was completely shocked. Joseph was right there looking at me. While I froze in shock, he shook his head, then stormed off. Without even thinking, I immediately stood up, rushed after him, and apologized. He ignored me and hopped onto his motorcycle, so I jumped onto the back of it and refused to move. "Please, I didn't mean what I said. Please, just listen to me," I begged. In the end, he passed me a helmet and told me to put it on. I couldn't help but feel excited. I'd wanted to ride on the back of his motorcycle ever since I'd first seen a picture of him on it. OMG. Now it was actually happening! Okay, so this wasn't how I envisioned it, but still, this was amazing. And I made sure to hug my arms tightly around his waist, purely for safety purposes, of course. After about 10 minutes, he stopped at a deserted road. I thought he was going to shout at me, but instead, he turned around and smiled at me. Wow! Without the frown on his face, he looked even hotter.
"So, what were you saying about me earlier?"
he asked. Nothing. It was just a misunderstanding."
That's funny, because it sounded like you thought I had no personality, and, what was it? Oh, yes, you think I'm gay.
I'm sorry. You might be gay. It doesn't matter if you are. You have a great personality." Suddenly, he leaned forward and kissed me. OMG, talk about amazing! I was shocked, but so happy, even though I didn't know what was going on. As soon as he pulled away, I pulled him back so we could continue kissing. Then he said,
"I'm not gay, and I like to think I have a dazzling personality. I just like playing with you, but it seems like there must be a long time for you to be more mature. But it's okay. I'd train you then. Be my girlfriend."
Turns out, he'd noticed me too, but he wanted to see what happened first. Also, he thought I needed to grow up a bit, as my stunts, although amusing, were a bit on the childish side. But he also found the amount of effort I went to get his attention flattering. He told me how he'd only shown up at that party as he'd overheard me talking about it at college, and he wanted to come just because of me. I don't go to his classes anymore, which gives me far more time to concentrate on my actual classes. But we are now an official couple, and I couldn't be happier. So this is the story of how I ended up with the hottest boyfriend known to mankind. My advice to you is to be bold in the pursuit of love. As if you just sit around waiting for it to drop on your doorstep, well, you'll be waiting forever. Go get him, Tiger! That's what I did, and it totally worked for me. So there's no reason why it can't work for you, too.